How's it going, everyone? This is Gray with Puppet Master Labs, here to go over our updated Ozone Engine module for the Unreal Engine 4. Today we'll be talking about ModMat Surface version 2. So for those that have used it, ModMat Surface version 1 was essentially a set of 3 master materials and the material functions and other assets that went into them. While that worked fine in most cases, the materials felt a little bloated if you rarely needed most of the parameters that it exposed. ModMat Surface v2 is a complete overhaul that retains the capabilities that the previous version had while allowing you to expand it as if you were building custom materials using vanilla nodes. Instead of just straight pre-built materials that have dozens of customizations available, ModMat version 2 is a set of building blocks, as it were, that allow you to create modular and custom master materials with the majority of the tedious and repetitive work already taken care of. Much like in the first version, it all starts with the material functions. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and hit that bell if you're interested in seeing more of what Puppet Master Labs is up to, and be sure to leave any questions or comments down below. I'll leave a link in the description that will take you to the page on Puppet Master's website where you can find additional information, media, and links regarding this module. So in the ModMat Surface folder, you'll see the typical Ozone Engine folder structure. Your demo assets, a resources folder, and then a third, in this case, a materials folder. You go into that folder, if you go into functions, you'll see most of the categories from the first version. Now in version 2 point whatever and up, we'll be adding more and more of these functions, but for right now I think there are around 80 something functions to kind of get you guys started. You go into the attribute folder here, you'll see the 8 functions that are kind of at the center of all of this. Well, 4 functions, but there's 2 variations of each. The way version 1 worked, it had most of the maps broken down so that you had options for, base color, normal, metallic, specular, clear coat, blah, blah, blah. And then all of the options for each. If you boil it down, maps basically come in 4 main flavors. You've got color maps like base color, specular, subsurface color. You've got grayscale maps, so your metallic, roughness, opacity, clear coat, and so on. Black and white maps are mainly for opacity masks and other masking functionality, and then normal maps for normals. So you can see you've got your color, then your grayscale, black and white, and normal here. Now, like I said, there are 2 variations of each. So you've got your standard color, and you've got aligned. So any of these functions that interact directly with texture maps, or their UVs to be specific, are going to have an aligned counterpart. And that's going to be used for doing any kind of world or local alignment of your materials. So if we go back to, let's say, the adjustment folder, you're going to see the 4 map types again, and these handle any adjustments that would be needed for each one. So in the case of like the normal adjustments, you're going to be able to change the intensity of the normal map, for an example, and then within the black and white, you might be able to, or well, you will be able to invert the black and white map. I definitely recommend going through these. If there's something specific you're looking for, you could try typing it out in the material editor. Everything's been categorized with multiple categories and tags. They all have tooltips. All of the inputs and parameters also have tooltips, so hopefully everything is fairly straightforward. So if we take a look at our functions again, and in the preset attributes, Right. Let's take a look at, I think the opacity mask is probably the simplest. So this is our preset for the opacity mask map, as it were. You've got your output, you've got your vector 2 input for your UVs, you've got a parameter for a texture map. This is whichever opacity mask you're going to use. You've got 3 static bool parameters to use an opacity mask, to invert the opacity mask, or to adjust the opacity mask. And then you have this attribute black-white control node here, which basically tells you exactly what it's asking for and exactly what it gives you at the same time. So if we go take a look at our preset attribute opacity mask, we'll just go back into our other material here to opacity mask. Find this one. You can see that it literally takes in UVs and puts out an opacity mask. And if your material was under the masked blend mode, obviously this is where you would plug this in, and you would pass in the same UVs and go from there. Pretty straightforward as far as setting up your own presets. Like I said, these attribute nodes here that control specific types of maps are kind of where you would start it out at. And then if you want them to be able to adjust it, you could make this just a static bool set to true, so you always have the adjustment options. If you don't want them to adjust it, just set it to false. Maybe you've got something that's always going to be inverted. You can set up static controls here. It doesn't always have to be a parameter, but in this case, you don't have a whole lot to really mess with. The reason these are separate, however, if I go back and we'll check out normal map, and it's on the monitor. So this is how you would control, a normal map. So you've got the normal intensity, use normal, invert normal, and adjust normal. If I go back and grab the detail normal, this is the exact same setup, but now the parameters are named differently, because for anyone that knows what a detail normal map is, obviously you want it to be independent of your normal information if you do want to add any kind of detail. So separating these presets allows you to tack on extra layers of changes that can be made. But if you look, they're both just using the attribute normal node and different parameters to control the normal map. And then again, you would have your input UVs for both, but you might plug in, a specific UV for the normal and then a completely different one for the detail normal, depending on how you want to go about it. So inside the resources folder, you're going to see some materials, some instances, some other stuff, texture maps, models. If you look at the matte preview here, which I have open at the top there, this is going to be your typical ORM map setup with 3 different maps. You've got your color map, your ORM, and your normal. And this is typical of any starter setup. And if I look at the associated material instance here, because I made those parameters, you can select each map individually, and that helps us pick our maps for our 3 different material slots on this preview mesh here. Now if I go back to the materials folder, you're going to see there are 5 materials and an instance for each. Now, this is all of these are pre-built materials included with ModMat Surface using the functions built in. And if I go into our PBR ORM material, you're going to see 4 nodes. you've got a preset for base color, a preset for ORM, preset for normal, and then a preset for texture transforms. Now, the difference between this and the standard setup is that if you look at the instances, I set these up, manually to let us choose those maps. But if I go into the material instance for this particular material, you're going to see, okay, you've got pretty much all of the options available just right out of the box. So let's go ahead and add our base color. Normal. Our ORM. So now if I go back and forth, you can see that these materials, or their instances rather, are actually identical. The difference in this setup, though, is anything you want to do, you can do with the adjustments. You can enable and disable the maps or certain channels. So if I wanted to adjust, let's say, the base color and change the hue, it's already built in to do so. If I wanted it like a nice purplish, and then I want to desaturate it a little bit. And maybe brighten it up or darken it. Whatever you want to do. These are already built in. So as far as adjusting normals, there aren't really any normals with this, minus obviously just a default normal texture. So that's not really going to do anything. Same with the intensity. Now for the pre-built or the preset ORM function, you go to adjust, what you'll see is that it's added ambient occlusion, metallic, and roughness. And you can actually manipulate these individually of the other parts. And because these are all grayscale maps, you're going to see essentially 3 sets of grayscale functionality. The textures here, at least this one, doesn't really have any discernible UV information, so tiling and scaling and rotating, nothing's going to really happen with this one, but we'll get into taking a look at that in a little bit. So the last thing I want to take a look at are the 2 more detailed materials here. You've got a block out material and kind of a modified default grid. If I go into the demo folder here, you'll see the 4 different colors of the block out instances. And in materials, you'll see the Mastr for the block out and the Mastr for the default grid, and then you've got some other variations. That's the just other included block out and another copy of the default grid. But if I take a look at their materials, let's take a look at the block out first. So there are a couple other nodes in here that we haven't touched on yet, and that is these toggle alignment. Got some pattern nodes here, and these are just different operations that you can kind of add and subtract from different texture maps to give you some of these hopefully desired effects. But as you can see right now, we've got, so this toggle alignment is going to go hand in hand with any of your transform aligned or coordinate aligned or texture aligned, any of the nodes that give you additional control over local and world aligned UVs. In this case, we're only allowing you to scale the the block out material, and we're not even really allowing you to scale it because this isn't a parameter, but you get the point. So we've got a static bool of false, which means this is going to be a local aligned material just by default. Again, this could be a parameter, but in this case it's not. You can change the primary color, which is what we did here, and just change the different colors of it. and then did some pattern math, got parameters to change metallic and roughness, gave it some default normals, and that's about it. We took our aligned colors and just kind of followed through. You've got the green and blue, red and blue, red and green UVs, and as you can see, they just kind of follow through. And then we start breaking them up here into different directions. And in this case, we're adding together the tertiary color here with the map from these here. What else? And another, useful feature of this is this does have the vertex normals built in, so you would use it for any of your alignments, and then your align position as well. So that is the block out node. If I just go into one of these, you can just see that you've got primary color, the metallic and roughness of the primary color. Looks a little strange on this 3D mesh, but so just mess with those. Now, if I go into, let's check out the default grid. Why it doesn't open up the right monitor. This is another one. This is a little more advanced, but you're going to have control over all three colors. You've got, again, your toggle alignment, and leaving this by default is going to make it world, because by default alignment is true. So there's no need to add a static bool there. Again, you're kind of just setting exactly what scale you want it to be. So there's no options there. You've got your primary and secondary metallic, which depends on which color the grid is. Got the roughness as well. A lot more pattern combinations and switching around, default normals. But this essentially ends up making up this material here. And you can choose your three colors. You've got metallic for each grid square, and roughness for each grid square. And when you go into here, let's just actually grab a cube, throw this on it. As you can see, this is just a straight up world aligned material out of the box. They've gotten a lot simpler to put together, by all means, but it's nice to have one that you can just kind of click a bool, and boom, it's done. Alright, that's gonna do it for this one. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.